Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for listening to Alumless World for March 6, 2026. This is the Metrics Innovation in University Advancement Edition. I'm Ryan Catherwood, and I am joined by my CMAC colleague, Nicole Kempton. Nicole, it's been a minute. It's great to see you. How are you?
Great, Ryan. It was a rare sunny day. We've had almost nonstop rain here in London since the beginning of 2026. So just thinking that spring might actually be on the way eventually.
It doesn't stay cold and rainy in London all year?
Well, it kind of does, but I guess you have to take the good weather when you can get it.
Listeners, for those of you who aren't familiar, Nicole is the director of alumni at Imperial College London. She was one of our CMAC colleagues. It was what, July, Nicole, that you started that role?
Yep, I started in July, so it's been a little over half a year now.
Man, it's hard to believe. All right. Well, we're definitely going to debrief some more about that. And hopefully, I can even get you on a special edition to talk about your experience there at Imperial. But on Alumless World, we talk about alumni and constituent engagement strategies and education advancement. But we take a global perspective on Alumless World and invite guests from all over the planet. We are pre recorded today, but please do say hello in the comments section on LinkedIn or YouTube because we'll be tuning in and responding to your questions in the stream the best we can. And if you're listening to us by podcast, we appreciate you adding us to your feed. We're grateful for the teams at Protopia, AlumniQ, and Givesy for being our Alumless presenting sponsors for season 4. And big news, drum roll, we are pleased to announce our newest sponsor, Richmond Associates. Richmond Associates is a global executive staffing firm that specializes in roles in the advancement space. And we are thrilled to begin our partnership with Richmond Associates the second half of our season 4. All right. So, Nicole, talk a little bit about how it's been going there. Like, what's it been like getting used to leading the alumni program there at Imperial?
Yeah, well, Ryan, it's been a really great start, and I have a fantastic team. Very lucky to be working with some amazing people. We actually interviewed one of my colleagues, Joe Gardner, on this very podcast a while
I remember.
back, and I think that Imperial is really an institution on an incredibly positive trajectory at the moment, and so it's just amazing to be part of the Science for Humanity mission and really feel like we're making an impact in the work that we do. And I think we're looking towards the public launch of our campaign in 2027 and thinking about how we can mobilize our alumni community around Science for Humanity and the campaign. And so this episode is really timely for me because I'm just in the middle of thinking about engagement goals for the campaign. And so I'm looking forward to learning from Barbara and all the great work that she's done at the University of Toronto. So really looking forward to this.
I wanted to ask you about innovation at Imperial, just generally speaking, because it's tough, right? Making adjustments, innovating things that have been traditions for a long period of time can really be challenging. But what have you noticed specifically at Imperial about the challenges you face in working to innovate?
We face a lot of the challenges that institutions everywhere face, but I would say that one of the things that we're really thinking about is how do we use our resources as efficiently as possible and how do we kind of do more with less. We are a UK institution, and so we don't have the same level of staffing resources that a lot of our US peers might have. And, we're ranked number 2 in the world, which is amazing. But it also means that our alumni, expect a world leading alumni experience, and we have to deliver that in a very efficient way. And so we're really lucky because we have great volunteers and we have a great team and we have an institution that is very innovation minded. And so I think we're lucky to have those ingredients, but we definitely have to think about sort of scale and impact in everything that we do. So we have to make sure that we're really utilizing those resources that we do have to, to create the biggest impact, to engage the most people that we can, and to be also at the same time really targeted and making sure that we're cultivating the audiences that we think have the potential to engage more deeply with the institution. And so I think Barbara's actually going to talk probably a lot about that, and
Yeah.
how they've done that at Toronto, but definitely something on our mind at Imperial as well. And I should say, for the record, I'm here in my personal capacity and not necessarily as an official representative of Imperial College, but I'm glad to be here nonetheless. And it's really a pleasure to be back with you on Alumless World.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll have some alumni of Imperial. They'll be pleased to hear that you're setting barriers for podcasting colleagues too. All right, well, let's bring Barbara out to the show. Hey, Barbara, how are you?
I'm really well, thank you. It's so great to be here today.
So great to have you. Our special guest today is Barbara Dick, and Barbara is the Assistant Vice President for Alumni Relations at the University of Toronto. Barbara, I thought maybe we could start from the beginning. And you have built a distinguished career in alumni engagement and within advancement. But talk a little bit about how you first found your way into the field, and then, like, what convinced you at some point this was the right fit for you?
Great question. And boy, a distinguished career. It makes me feel like I should have grayer hair. But thank you for saying that, first of all. And, like most people of my generation, because I've been in this in advancement now for more than 3 decades. I think, like most people of my generation, I found my way here by accident. I won't take you all the way back. It all began in a little town in the Midwest, but it really did happen by accident. My graduate work overseas was interrupted. I was studying behind the Iron Curtain, and my graduate work overseas was interrupted by martial law, the imposition of martial law. So it all to Toronto, sort of mid-year, at a complete loss. The rug had been completely pulled out from under my feet. So I literally stumbled into advancement by accident. And, in the course of my career, I've had the good fortune of working in almost all areas of advancement, but have spent the longest time in alumni relations. To be honest, I don't think that I realized, or my most conscious moment about this field being for me really came about when I was putting my name forward for the assistant vice president position, when it was such an opportunity to reflect on, at that point, close to 2 decades in the field, and frankly, many years of frustration, because you don't have to be in an advancement shop for very long, or at least in those days, you didn't have to be in a shop for very long to realize that fundraisers got the respect, they had the credibility. We were the party people. We were the make nice, make people feel good, but no one would have ever accused us of an excess of rigor. There wasn't, I think, a great sense of deep respect for the work. There was an appreciation of the work, but not a lot of respect. And I think what intrigued me about being able to be in a leadership role like this was the opportunity to have a mandate to really bring some rigor to the field, to be able to speak about what we do in a way that would command respect, because it deserves respect. And that was the most frustrating thing for many years of my career, that we didn't have the tools, the narrative, the data at our disposal to be able to speak about the work that we did in a way that would command respect. And so that was kind of the platform, if you will, that I presented my candidacy on. And fortunately, it resonated with people. And I have to say, that was the moment, I think, when I realized, yes, this is exactly where I belong, because I know this business inside out. not only the alumni relations business, I know the good, the bad, and the ugly, but I also know enough about my fellow advancement colleagues, and I know what they value, I know what's important to them, and I know how you need to speak to them and with them and how to engage with them. And I think that has in many ways been, that was kind of the superpower that I brought, if you will, that I brought to this role. And I have to say it's been the most exhilarating ride of my life. And it's only more recently that I've started to reflect on the fact my graduate work was in comparative literature. So it's only recently that I've kind of realized, well, perhaps what initially attracted me to this work is the fact that when you work in alumni relations, you have the opportunity, you have access to hundreds of thousands, in the case of the University of Toronto, more than 715,000 alumni stories, right? And so the power of storytelling is something that has always had a great hold over me. And in my work, on a very fundamental level, it really has been about being able to explore those stories and celebrate those stories. So I feel like my career it's kind of come full circle, if you will, in that way.
Yeah. Well, it's really cool to hear you say that, you first of all, just like I think Nicole and probably myself, we kind of fall into it, right? But most people are sort of that way, but that you were in the space for a little while and your why behind the work ended up being really about the question of becoming more of an integrated advancement shop, right? Sort of like the next question, right, gets to the heart of the matter. And you sort of identified this problem of the alumni relations endeavor being one that didn't have the respect behind it institutionally. And that became your why for your career, which I think is perfect and exciting for you and your team there, I'm sure.
And from one comparative literature grad to another, I salute you. But I'm curious, Barbara, because, I think we all have seen in the last 5 to 7 years, pretty much since the case metrics work began in earnest, that, we really see the value of alumni engagement in the data, right? And so I'm curious for you, kind of getting into that integrated advancement question. What does integrated advancement mean to you as a leader, and why is it critical for a university like Toronto?
It's critical for us, but I think it's critical for any advancement operation, right? In a university, an independent school, you name it, it's critical. And I think what's at the heart of it is a deep fundamental understanding that alumni and donors are not different people. I mean, of course, every institution has donors who are not alumni, but it always struck me as so interesting that people in fundraising would speak about donors, their donors, and then they would speak about alumni as if we were talking about two different constituencies. And in fact, but, it's one thing to tell people, well, your donor is also an alum. It's one thing to tell people that. And it's another thing for people to fully appreciate the fact that the prospect or donor with whom they are engaging actually has history. They don't come as a clean slate. Very rarely, does someone emerge from the, woodwork. But even those people, they may emerge from the woodwork with no sort of formal engagement that we might know about. But, they've been reading the magazine for 40 years or whatever it might be. So I think on a very fundamental level, integrated advancement is predicated on the idea that there's an understanding both on the part of fundraisers, our communications colleagues, and our alumni relations colleagues. Our alumni audience is multifaceted. They're real people. They act in different modalities. They express their needs and interests in different ways, and they don't view their relationship with us in a siloed way. And that sounds so commonsensical, but it's remarkable how many walls I, and I'm sure colleagues across the sector, have encountered in trying to do their work when a fundraiser would say, well, no, you can't talk to them because I'm talking to them. And I mean, obviously, these things need to be choreographed and handled carefully. But I think an integrated advancement operation is predicated on the idea that there's also a recognition that there is value in the non-philanthropic engagements that someone might have, and that they actually contribute to the strength of the relationship that the fundraiser is then able to take full advantage of. We're fortunate enough to now have a best practice that newly hired fundraisers across our institution have an alumni relations orientation as part of their orientation. And I take extra time with fundraisers who are coming from outside of higher ed, because sometimes there isn't a full appreciation on the part of fundraisers who might be coming from another sector, where the relationship with donors is much more transactional. I support your cause, I make a gift, you tell me about the impact, you send me a tax receipt, you thank me, and I'm happy, right? Our alumni come to the donor relationship with a lot more baggage, right? I mean, they've had how many decades of, they've had their student experience, they've had decades potentially of alumni engagement experience or lack thereof, right? So it's sometimes, many fundraisers, of course, grasp it intuitively, but many fundraisers have actually expressed appreciation for that extra nuance that exists as part of our relationship with our alumni. And I think that insight then, positions us to be seen as an asset rather than as a competitor, or as an entity that's going to somehow sabotage the carefully cultivated relationship.
We're going to take a break right there, and we'll be back just after this message with Barbara Dick from the University of Toronto.
Meet Alumni Q, the only all-in-one platform built exclusively for higher education. From everyday events and email outreach to online giving, directories, membership management, and seamless integrations, Alumni Q helps institutions connect, engage, and inspire. Handling major reunions or homecomings? Alumni Q's signature events service has you covered with rules-based registration, name tag printing, real-time reporting, and giving integration. Visit alumniq.com to request a demo and start making meaningful connections today.
So, Barbara, in another important area of innovation, you've been a leading voice in alumni engagement metrics. And where do you think the field is right now? And what are we doing well? And where do you see the biggest gaps persisting?
I just came back from meeting with colleagues as part of CAAE down in San Antonio a week and a half ago. And I have to say, having been part of that organization for more than 15 years, it was so remarkable to me to be sitting there listening to more than 80 colleagues from across the continent all talk about where they were at with respect to alumni engagement goals, alumni engagement metrics. Everyone was in a different place, but everyone, the nomenclature has, the vocabulary has changed. It's now part of everyone's vocabulary. It's part of everyone's planning process, and everyone's in different places, understandably, and everyone will probably end up doing it in a slightly different way. But having been at those tables, 10, 15 years ago, where these kind of conversations were the outliers, or these were sort of aspirational thoughts, it was really, really exciting. So I think, with the combined leadership of what, CASE is doing with the AEM metrics model and the way that is permeating not only the conversations that Alumni Relations staff colleagues are having, but the conversations that advancement leadership is having. I think that's really, really powerful. I am very optimistic about the future. I think that we're just going to continue to evolve this. I think maybe even a year ago, I would have said the biggest gap is with respect to business analytics capacity in terms of institutions' sort of infrastructure and their ability to support. But now, given the way that AI is becoming integrated and becoming more conversant with our business, I actually think that competency gap in terms of data analytics is going to diminish really, really quickly, because I think that with, learning how to ask the right questions will be the only requirement that will, well, not the only, but it'll be easier to get a lot further even without in-house data analytics support and, business analytics support.
Yeah.
I think there'll be much more of that power in the hands of, lay people, if you will.
Man, that's a really interesting thought. And I think that you're probably right, that AI will really reduce the gap in terms of availability of metrics and reporting over time. And it will be interesting to watch schools try to figure out how to fill this gap because in working on our metrics practice area, there's definitely a lot of challenges of, grabbing data from disparate systems to cleaning, coding, categorizing the data, right? To adding it and taking it out of CRMs to a nomenclature, right? A taxonomy. So and it's like there's a lot that goes into it, but no doubt, I think we'll be able to close that gap. Can you share one example at the University of Toronto, how sort of nuanced metrics helped actually change a decision or a strategy at UT?
We have this dual goal, and the fact that our engagement goals stand shoulder to shoulder with our financial goals and are fully integrated and entwined in our narrative, that has been phenomenally powerful, both internally in terms of everything from resource allocation to communication integration to volunteer management. We have a campaign steering committee that is every bit as engaged with the engagement goal as it is with the financial goal. And the impact that has had in terms of alumni perceptions of the campaign it can't be overstated, because historically, and I've seen 4 campaigns at the University of Toronto, all of increasing maturity and sophistication and ambition. The earlier campaigns were much more about, from the average alum, it was more, campaigns have nothing to do with me because I can't give $1 million. And so this integrated narrative has really broadened the threshold for participation because, and I don't want to say it's lowered it, but it's made it easier to be part of the campaign, because you can be part of the campaign by supporting the university's mission, by mentoring a student, and, as well as making a donation. It's fostered a greater sense of buy-in, sort of from a narrative and relationship perspective. In terms of an impact on a very practical level, we are able to, I'll give you a very on-the-ground example. Because our data set has allowed us to do much more segmentation, much more sophisticated segmentation of our audience, and we really have a much more multidimensional segmentation approach. It's not only by year of graduation or faculty or life stage or geography. It can be by virtue of the type of engagement they've demonstrated. We've been able to lever our data to do a persona analysis. So we can, in order to drive our newly engaged goal, we can target segments very, very precisely. And as you can imagine, the unengaged is the largest segment. So you really need to be able to open that black box of all these unengaged people and figure out who's in there. And because our personas have allowed us to do that. We've been able to just tweak our marketing, segment our marketing, tweak the timing of marketing so that we've been able to increase. One of the metrics that we track, not publicly, but internally, is the newly engaged rate. Basically, we look at, how many people came versus how many people responded versus and how many of those are newly engaged. And, we average maybe 18 to 20% newly engaged rate, depending on the event. And by doing some experimentation with tweaking to different segments and so on, we were able to increase our newly engaged rate for certain events up to more than 60% newly engaged rate, which is, we were astonished at how much we were able to move the dial on that. We weren't expecting that it would have such a dramatic effect. It doesn't work across the board necessarily, but it did give us a great sense of confidence in the power of these data and how we can begin to strategically deploy them to advance our strategy. And that's becoming increasingly important as we get close to achieving our goals, because while our pool of unengaged is still large, we've kind of harvested all the low-hanging fruit. We're now dealing with what we euphemistically call the engagement resistant. So we just haven't found the right thing for them yet. And that's where segmentation will be key.
Yeah,
I love the growth mindset, Barbara.
Yeah, me too. I love engaging the resistant group and doing so with metrics and some real thoughtfulness around the strategies you're using. Metrics makes it possible, right? And we're going to pick up the conversation with Barbara Dick after the break. We have bumped up against the end of our live show on LinkedIn and YouTube. Before we go, I wanted to once again thank Richmond Associates for their partnership and mention that they have a featured job posted on their website right now for Head of Philanthropy at the Said Business School at the University of Oxford. So if you are in the market for a head of philanthropy role at one of the premier business schools on the planet, you should definitely consider visiting richmond-associates.com and check out their job board, because they've got all sorts of great opportunities in the UK and over in Australia. And Barbara, thank you so much. We're going to be back with you after the break. We do like to preview our upcoming episode of Alumless as well, which is going to be on March 13th. We're going to have a new episode with Howard Heavner, CMAC colleague and executive director at Cal Berkeley, who has some results from our national alumni survey. So we're going to talk through what we've discovered, and that should be a good one. So make sure to tune in, and we'll see everyone there.
Yeah, definitely. These episodes are the ones for the data nerds, I think, Ryan. This one and Howard's episode next time.